Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the Actual Magician's Bookshelf. Yes, I am an actual magician, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Synthetic and Practical Manual of the Tarot by Eudes Picard, and this was published in 1909. So it's contemporaneous with Arthur Edward Waite's Pictorial Key to the Tarot, and it's really interesting looking at publications of around the same time to understand how the tarot was being turned into a esoteric device to illustrate correspondences. Now, with all books, it's always important, I feel, to immediately go to the back and look at the bibliography. So in this book, we take a look at the bibliography, and we can see it there. And incidentally, for those watching this in real time, or obviously as a recording in real time, Happy New Year for 2025. I hope you survived the holiday events and all of the things that come with Christmas and the holidays and the New Year, however you celebrate it, if at all. And so in the bibliography, we can see this is quite a short bibliography because it has Piob, Eliphas Levi, of course, Paul Christian, Papus, of course, which I'm going to do a few more videos on this year, Falconer and Bourget. And these are basically mentioned, some of these are mentioned in Arthur Edward Waite's bibliography for Pictorial Key to the Tarot, but his is far more extensive. And it's interesting to look at the illustrations as well to see how we are looking at a sort of Italia Tarot de Marseille construction here, but it does obviously then ring some bells with the Waite-Smith and other versions of the tarot and the Golden Dawn concepts of the tarot. And we also want to take a look at the minor arcana, of course, and look at how those are illustrated in a illustrated way, because they are actually illustrated. They may not be the full scenic illustrations that we see in the Waite-Smith Tarot, and perhaps they are a little step forwards from the Solar Busca Tarot, but they are very Italia inspired, and also we can see how the Golden Dawn might have been thinking about their construction of the symbols. Now, some of these symbols as well are very reminiscent to me of the Tarot of the Secret Dawn that we published, which was based on the notes of a Golden Dawn member. And it was, I guess, in consideration, he was thinking very much about the Italia type deck where we have segments of the card that in his particular major arcana, which were done by pathworking and are available through thegamecrafter.com, the Tarot of the Secret Dawn, we called it. They were described in three segments, basically, and geometrically laid out. And a lot of the early decks were similar to that. They had sort of insets, I guess, and then an illustrative bit, and then also things to do with the correspondences. And let's just take a look at one of the one of the court cards here, and I'll take a look at some of the other court cards, and we can see some of the astrological correspondences in this. The Pentacles. Particularly interested always in the Two of Pentacles in any early deck, because we presumed that Pamela Common-Smith got her design for it from the Flower book by Edward Burne-Jones, and we describe that and explore that in Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, published by Llewellyn. So I'm always interested to see how earlier authors were really conceptualizing the Two of Pentacles because it's such a unique and therefore identifiable to a particular source illustration by Pamela Coleman Smith. It really goes with the description that Waite and the Golden Dawn had of that card as miscommunication, as things to do with communication, letters of business, misrepresentation, and so forth. And Pamela Coleman Smith used an illustration called False Mercury in Edward Burne-Jones' Flower Book, which was given to the British Museum in 1909, the year that Pamela Coleman Smith and Arthur Edward Waite went there. Waite was there an awful lot of the time anyway, but in particular to see some of the Solar Busker designs and some of the other illustrated cards as well for, I guess, talking about the designs for their deck. And here we see the Two of Pentacles is described as two opposing pentacles, one of them above the earth and bearing the effigy of the sun, is supported by two eagles. The other is held to the ground by roots. It bears the signs of the earth and the moon. And we actually have the symbols here, Terra and Luna. This arcanum, here it's called an arcanum, symbolizes the antagonism of matter considered under two aspects, infraterrestrial and supraterrestrial matter. That is, the principle of absorption by gold and emancipation by gold, the law of exchange of supply and demand. I'm reminded of the alchemical dictum of Aurum non nostrum vulgi, which is, our gold is not the gold of the common people, but someone who was doing a pathworking for the inner guide meditation, as I was teaching in Switzerland about 20 years ago or more, came up with the idea of the work, the great work, is not just turning lead into gold, but also turning gold into lead, to recognize that the real gold, the gold of wealth and attachment and money and success and recognition, is actually the lead of earth, is the lead of materialism. And so we have the both the absorption by gold and the emancipation by gold embodied in this. And the meaning given is of a commercial contract and business partnership. So there we have the union of the Two of Pentacles. And in this, perhaps it's actually a reflection to some extent of the Two of Cups as we see it in the Waite-Smith Tarot. In fact, we see the Two of Cups is here the conjunction of the sun and the moon, and it is the prospect of union, commitment, and the union if the neighbouring arcana are favourable. So again, we've got some indications of how to read the tarot in the descriptions here. So the bibliography shows the sources, and then we can begin to understand the context in which the cards are given. Here we have card 18, the moon, and we can see an astrological correspondence, a numerical correspondence, and a letter, which is Sadai, and that is assigned to Papus's attributions. And obviously the very early decks, particularly in the Golden Dawn and the Waite-Smith deck, and to some extent Crowley's Thoth deck, really have a big discussion about the ordering of the letters, because there was a, I guess, esoteric capital in having the so-called correct order of the correspondences and how they apply to the cards. To me, I just see them as different maps. I think the Waite-Trinic order, Arthur Edward Waite's order of correspondence and attributions to the Tree of Life in his FRC order is far more suited to describing mystical states, challenges, resources, and waypoints, guideposts along the way. In the mystical and spiritual quest, the Golden Dawn is very good for the magical work and things along those lines, and to some extent inistry work, and Aleister Crowley's attributions, which are obviously slightly just tweaked, a couple of changes from the Golden Dawn attributions and correspondences, are very good for self-development and thelemic work, working with the will, working with self-discovery, the parts of the mind, and so forth. So here we have a commentary on it, and we have the general sense, which is deception. And here we also quite nicely have the meanings given, but this is according to Paul Christian, this is according to Papus. ELL will be Eliphas Levi. And so there's a commentary where he has cited his sources, which is something Arthur Edward Waite certainly doesn't in Pictorial Key to the Tarot. Quite often he says, according to some sources, or according to one person, or according to similar to a respected source, and quite often he then just uses the Golden Dawn terminology almost word for word. So there's a sense here that the moon is to do with deception. Let's have a look at the star, is to do with hope. And that follows a lot of these other meanings. Basically, he's synthesizing these meanings to give a keyword. So we have a first example of the keyword of the Tower of being ruin. This is as early as 1909. The Hanged Man as being sacrifice. Now, this particular version of the Synthetic and Practical Manual of the Tarot was translated quite recently. Let me find the opening pages here for you, by Daniel Bernardo in 2022. So that's only a couple of years ago, as this is like the 3rd of January 2025. I'm recording this, just getting used to saying 2025. So this is now technically 3 years ago, and translated from the French. And it's a really useful, interesting book that I doubt a lot of people have come across or really studied at length. And I think it's a very useful book to really understand the components of tarot, the meanings of tarot, the keywords of tarot that are given. Let's have a look at the Queen of Wands, for example. It is a queen holding a flaming scepter, standing on an arrow. The arrow symbolizes Sagittarius, the second fire sign. So we can see these zodiacal correspondences here. It is directed towards the earth. The Arcanum recalls the deeply educational character of Sagittarius as it applies to women, meaning the educated, active and artistic woman. She may also be the wife of a scholar, a merchant or an artist. Obviously these interpretations were of their time. The very earliest card interpretations that we see in Flamstead and Partridge, as we cover in Tarot Time Traveller, just off camera here, and now out of print, so get your copies while they can. In fact, we have a special offer at the moment for the Tarot Association. If we have any copies left of that, because we bought our own copies at an author's discount when Llewellyn ran them out of print, then we're sending, if you're based in the US, you can get a free copy of Tarot Time Traveller, which is out of print and is likely to be, therefore become quite rare in future. At the time of recording anyway. If you're based in the US, I'll put a link down below. One of the other things that we can also take a look at is whether there is a guide to reading the cards, and there isn't much of a guide of reading them. It says here, these quick descriptions give a general notion of the interpretation and combinations of the main cards. The care that must be taken in analysing a card is obvious. No detail should be omitted. And it just really talks about a general interpretation of how to apply a card to a particular situation, just giving one, it says, random example. Card 6 entitled The Lover. And then it basically says, it goes into some difference between attitudes of men and women, and then it says, in short, the arcana indicate the struggle on equal terms between the passions and the feelings. by extension, they mark that time of indecision that precedes the moment when man chooses between good and evil. Could this duality be better summarized than in the traits of the Lover card? The card is under the domination of Virgo, an earth sign. In the interpretation, we must first stay with the meaning of the tradition, so-called. The Lover taking care to compose the surrounding cards in order to assign it a definite meaning which must not deviate from the dominant idea of hesitation in the face of trial. He is using a really good example of how you extract and extrapolate the meaning, how you literally abstract it out of the card to a more general notion, which is the dominant idea of hesitation in the face of trial, a point of indecision in a challenging circumstance, and then showing that that is how you then apply it to a reading. But that is basically how you do it. He says that you can place two rows of 11 cards of the major arcana. This is on page 8 of this particular translation. And then make dualities and matches between the two cards. This is something in Tarosophy I call a layout. And there are loads of different ways that you can lay the cards out, particularly the major arcana, in squares, in patterns, in loops, and then narrate them, make pairings, make contrasts, see patterns in them between the cards and so forth. And whether that was originally intended in any particular deck, like the Tarot de Marseille or any of the other decks, your mileage may vary with that. It also says here, considered as a whole, the tarot represents the evolution of man. The magician opens his cycle which closes in the world, taking man through the stages where he develops and perfects himself on all planes. It's basically the magician's journey rather than the fool's journey, but it's seen as a journey. It's seen as a graduated process through the major arcana that is an evolutionary process and therefore an initiatory one as well. So the interpretation bit at the back is literally 4 pages, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. And it says one can arrange the charts in different ways. It talks about a method which is quite interesting at the end here, just literally in the last couple of paragraphs. It says there are other excellent methods for interpreting the cards, amongst which we especially recommend that of the gypsies, recommended by Borjat, if I pronounce that correctly, Borjat. And there we go to Borjat, and I'll take a look at his work in another video. This method confirms the relationship of tarot with astrology, for the arrangement of cards indicates nothing other than the representation of an astrological scheme considered under the aspects of the dominations. 12 piles of 4 cards each are arranged in the form of a circle. Each group represents a house of the horoscope with a meaning attributed to it by tradition and which we recall. There we have an astrological spread, and it's like Instagram and TikTok are full of people who seem to have invented the astrological spread or their particular method of it. And here it is at the back of this in 1909. The first pile represents the subject, their health, physique. The second, possessions. The third, siblings. The fourth, father. The fifth, children. These are the houses of astrology. The 10th, status, honours. The 11th, friends. The 12th, enemies. And then it talks about how you can arrange and interpret the cards just in this single page from those simple examples that are given. And how does it end? It says, it may be objected that we have presented methods of interpretation without supporting them with examples. We have done so on purpose. Well, I doubt that, but it's stated here we have done so on purpose. Interpretation is an art. It requires a special tact of which no treatise can give an idea. In general, the examples extracted from tarot books have an obligatory character. This is understood. The authors have tried to approximate the arcana, whose meaning is completed, no doubt, to clarify the difficulties. In practice, it is not the same. The most opposite arcana and symbols often meet side by side, so it is necessary to reconcile their meanings. And Waite actually does make a great deal of how do you reconcile opposing or contradictory meanings, particularly if they're in one card and also between cards. And perhaps I can do a video on how we do that in actual practical reading, as it says here. In practice, it is not the same. In practice, it's often not the same as given in a book. And sometimes you can tell the quality of the reader and how much experience they have in reading in the examples that they give, because quite often they are staged examples and not real examples from reading experience. On the other hand, throughout the book, we've tried to emphasize to the reader the importance of other factors, such as initiative, will, and personal effort. It's basically the modern equivalent of gamers telling you to get good without giving you any other advice as to how to solve a problem in a game or challenge in a game. We could not end in a better way than emphasizing their importance, the importance of initiative, will, and personal effort in taking in the meaning and then interpreting them in practical reading. It could be possible that they weren't interested in practical reading, or they had no real examples of that, or their treatise, they didn't have time for it, or a lot of other things other than we don't think it's a good idea. You take the meanings and then you apply it as you want, although that could be one way of approaching it, of course. So let's just have a look at one final card here. The Eight of Sceptres forms a star. It's surrounded by light flames that transform the atmosphere into vapours where the upper four sceptres meet, and we can see some of the Thoth Crowley inspirations via the Golden Dawn, of course, but this is a Etelia based design as well, so it's somewhere in the middle. It's like a parallel world to the Waite-Smith, to the Golden Dawn, to the Etelia, to the Tarot de Marseille, to the Thoth Tarot, and so forth. And here we have the meaning of this, and it explains it here. This is the image of the balance of the intellectual faculties. It is genius disciplined by reason. It is also the temperate environment favourable to life, the zone of exchange. So it's like an interface zone between the fire and the air, giving rise to the meanings of balance, commercial operations, trees, grains and fruit, very specific. If you want to know what to change your diet to or something along those lines, the Eight of Swords is literally trees, grains and fruits. It'd be interesting to see if that meaning has gone anywhere else outside of Picard here. Among animals, then, it's specifically the card of mammals. So don't know offhand where he's drawing that from, but it'll be interesting to see if that meaning goes anywhere else for the Eight of Swords. So I hope that this gives you some interest in perhaps acquiring this book. If you're interested in the history of tarot meanings and symbolism, and this is actually a book that is part of our current research. Tali Goodwin and I are just completing I think it's our 6th book for Llewellyn that has to be submitted in literally 2 weeks from the time of this recording. So I'll be busy on that for the next couple of weeks, just finalising it. We've spent about 8 years on and off in the last couple of years, particularly working on it. And this is just one of the hundreds of books that is behind the research and the reading for that particular book. I look forward to sharing that once Llewellyn have received it and once we've completed it and then into the next stages of printing it. If you've got any interest actually in the writing life in the world of a professional author, in the sense of agents, deadlines, the printing process, self-publication versus mass market publication, and all of the financial aspects of it, contractual aspects of it, and some of the psychological and emotional aspects of writing, then I'm always happy to answer questions if I can along those lines. I've been writing for about 10-15 years now full time, and just up there is my original rejection letter from Llewellyn, which was in about 1980 something, and I swore I would never try submitting a book to a publisher ever again, and of course since then have obviously changed my mind a bit about that. And this is all just part of just generally the nuts and bolts of the profession of actually writing as a living. So if you've got any questions about that, be happy to answer those if I can, and if my opinion or experience is worth anything to anyone else, I'd be happy to share it. So thanks a lot for watching, and I look forward to doing many more videos in 2025. If you have time, please do catch up on any of the videos from 2024. I did a daily video with a short with book recommendations from my favourite books. Again, any questions, just let me know. And I did a weekly video, and I'm planning to continue that, the weekly videos, the long form videos, and perhaps do some more like documentary style videos and perhaps some other formats for the videos to keep things interesting as well. So thanks a lot. Any questions, suggestions, please drop them below, and I look forward to sharing the rest of 2025 with you. As ever, the worker is hidden in the workshop.